welcome to the GeoVital Academy. I'm excited that you're here. Okay, here we are at the building site here in Thailand. So we're going to take some measurements. All right, this morning we'll get stuck into measuring instrumentation and let's say the theory of doing a home assessment. So if you can hold on to the wire. There's this concept of electronic pollution. I mean, we've been doing this for 35 years, but we're getting more and more involved in the shielding of entire homes. All right, so this is our little demonstration room. An option would be to use shielded cable. All right, so we got the GPA on most of the walls here. During the American workshop from here in Canada. Hello and greetings from Oman and greetings from Singapore. Hello, welcome. Greetings from Dubai.
5,500 to this. That's awesome.
This is Patrick Vandenberg, your global radiation specialist. Okay, great. Thank you for coming to EMFQ&A, where we give you an opportunity to sort of connect with us and ask any well, a lot of questions in relation to existing homes. Okay, great. So Austin has a question about shielding in a residence that is, maybe not permanent, as in, you're buying a house and you're anticipating you won't be there long, or you're renting a house and you anticipating you might not be there long. So what shielding materials could you use in that sort of approach? And if you were to move on, what could you sort of reuse? All right, so a bit of a not a loaded question, but a full-on question, as in there's a lot to it. So we want to address magnetic fields, electric fields that come from voltage on the wiring, and we want to address radio frequency radiation that comes in from outside sources, phone towers, and that sort of stuff. So magnetic fields, often there's not much you can do about it. If it is an outside source, like a local distribution line running past the property, or transmission lines. If it's internal wiring that's causing the problem, then you have a chance of fixing it. So normally during an assessment, you would uncover that with your consultant, and then typically an electrician would be required to try and fix that. There's no guarantees, but you may be able to. That is just something that needs to be fixed, and that's not something, that's just labor, let's say. That's not something you could take with you. So you'll have to deal with that no matter where you are. If it's a rental property, then that could be tricky because your landlord may not necessarily understand why this is even a problem, right? So again, very important to measure that before you sign for any house, buying or renting, with a decent quality amateur Gauss meter. So electric fields comes from the wiring that typically sits in the wall. So the approach with that is that you have to identify during an assessment which electrical circuits are causing the exposure on the person. To then deal with it, you would ideally use cutoff switches that can cut the power to the circuits when they're not in use or when you want them deactivated. There's different systems you would use. The switches that can be purchased for that, they need to be installed by an electrician, but they can also be uninstalled by an electrician. So I would argue that that is a solution that you can purchase and then take with you. I guess if you get a little bit nitpicky, one house is different than another. So depending, on how many switches you have, that might be different in another property that you go to. When it comes to radio frequency radiation, the ideal approach would be the T98 shielding paint, because it gives the biggest shielding, and was created very fine balance with actually that holistic approach of us. As we have that holistic naturopathic clinic in Austria. So we want shielding effectiveness, and we want it to actually be a good environment, healthy environment for us long term. So that is the ideal approach. Paint the walls and ceiling, at least in a bedroom. If you're not on ground floor, you have to do the floor as well. And then the windows need to be dealt with, for which you typically use Nova fabric. Now, of course, if you're not staying somewhere long term or it's a rental, this could be, not ideal. With rental properties, just before you discount shielding paint, we've had clients who talked with their landlord and then discussed the issue of phone tower radiation, that sort of stuff, and that they were interested in getting an assessment done and getting the place protected or shielded. And with this client, was one of my clients in Sydney, which you have to realize sometimes a rental property is the home that the landlord envisions themselves moving into down the track, maybe when they're retired. So they may very well be willing to invest in making this a better place. And, if, you bring to their attention the issues of, radio frequency radiation exposure, World Health Organization, ranking it as a possible carcinogen. All the research out there can be that these people go like, oh my goodness, I didn't know, this sounds serious, and I've always sort of wondered. So yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? And so you might be surprised what a landlord might be able or be willing to pay for. In case of my client, the client paid to fly me over to Sydney. We did the assessment, and then we worked out what needed to be done. There was a cell phone tower not too far from there. Of course, radio frequency radiation absorption on the body was way too high, but they loved the house and the location. And so the landlords, they came to an agreement. The landlord paid for all the shielding, and they were going to implement it. So they painted the rooms, they did the work, and the landlord paid for all the materials. So don't discount that either. But typically for short-term stays or rental scenarios, you would tend to maybe easily sway towards using Nova shielding fabric as your weapon against radio frequency radiation. So with Nova, you could easily create a canopy yourself. I'll draw you something. Okay. So if you have a bed, something like that. Getting better at this, aren't I? All right, so if you, of course, above the bed, you have a ceiling. So if you, on the ceiling, you might have heard me talk about those before. If you have those sticky hooks, they've got like adhesive tape that's easily removable, 3M or something, you pull on it and then it comes off clean. It doesn't tear the paint off the wall. I'll draw them a little big because I just can't draw them small. So let's imagine that you stick 2 of those on the ceiling and the hooks face in opposite directions. Right now you have, it looks like one of those things that you see on the edges of a boat, that they tie the ropes onto when they go into the harbor. So you could bring up here and with a little loop, piece of rope, like a loop, I guess. And you can hang that off those hooks, and those hooks can take quite, a decent amount of weight. So if you have 2 of them, then you can suspend something from one location. So I'll just remove a little wire again for the sake of the drawing. And so if you had Nova fabric, and Nova fabric is 2.5 meters wide. What's that in feet? 10 feet? 10 feet? No, that's too much. 8 feet or so. 8, 9 feet, somewhere there. So if this was the fabric, right, you buy it in linear meters, as in linear yards, let's say. But it's always that width, right? Because the roll is that wide. So we just see how much you need and we cut it off. So what you can do with that piece of fabric is that you can bundle this whole top edge together. I mean, this is a do-it-yourself sort of solution, right? You can bundle this whole thing together, maybe take a nice thick rope or a ribbon or something, bundle it all together so you get everything in the one area, tie a rope around it, and you can suspend it from that one point. So then you get something, like this that can drape over the bed this way, right? So you got all your fabric together here on one edge, and the other edge goes around the bed. Something like that. Now, of course, you need to order enough fabric to do that. So you need to measure how, what the distance is to go around your bed. You need to realize that you might have a doona or something on top of the bed, which might hang over the edges. So you want to measure around that, not just around your mattress. Then you also want to allow for the fact that you need a little bit of overlapping, so you don't go too close, otherwise it'd be a shame if, you stick a leg out or something, it moves a bit, and then you've got an opening in your shielding. So you want to go, I'd say a meter or a yard wider than that you need to go around the bed. So you got this overlapping. And so this way you can easily construct a sort of TP-shaped, tent-shaped sort of shielding canopy. We have ready-made canopies, which are, of course, lovely. They are made, that's a bit big. I'll draw it underneath it. So they have a panel on the feet end, the side end, and they also have a top panel, so it's a box shape. We have one panel on the side overlapping with the other panel by about 30 centimeters, about a foot. So you got overlapping. The queen and the king have an opening on either side because you get two people sleeping in the bed and you want to get out. And the canopies are made wider than a bed, and that's done on purpose. So when you step out of bed in the morning, that when you put your feet on the floor, let's say, you don't want this fabric straight in your face, right? That's just annoying. So ideally, you have a little bit more room. So we've made these canopies wider than a bed on purpose. So it gives you, it's a larger space on the inside, it's professionally put together. It's got suspension hooks on the corners and in the middle on both sides. Of course, I won't draw through the other drawing. And there's actually also a sleeve, much thinner than that looking, a sleeve going on all the edges. And so you could put a piece of dowel, piece of timber, broomstick, let's say, you could poke that through, let it stick out. Now you can suspend straight from these pieces of timber straight to the ceiling, which keeps the edges nice and straight. Looks very nice. But otherwise, you can just use the anchor points and suspend in 6 locations. Maybe there's even an anchor point here on the bigger ones, not quite sure. All right, so, but these square canopies, well, of course, people need to put these things together, and it's surprisingly a lot of time to put a canopy together, so that adds a fair bit of labor. Also, there is a Nova fabric panel in the ceiling, which of course adds more material. So in contrast to the do-it-yourself option, you'd be saving that entire ceiling panel, which is a fair bit of fabric. And yeah, Nova is very effective, but comes with a price tag, of course. Nova, it's silver-plated copper wire, cocooned in either polyester or cotton, but between this cocooning and the metal sits a varnish layer, and that protects it from you washing it. And of course, you're going to wash it. If that varnish isn't there, or if you have bare metal fabrics, your shielding goes down the drain when you wash it. So yeah, you don't see us use that. We think that's unethical. But anyway, so this is a way how you could, temporarily put something up in terms of Nova fabric and creating a makeshift canopy. The cute thing about this idea of just suspending it yourself in sort of a teepee idea is that when you're done with it, you undo this ribbon on the top and you're left with, I don't know, a 10-meter piece of Nova fabric. And you could, let's say, if you then move on to another house where you were renting before, and now you're buying something, now you can just use this piece of fabric and cut it up to make curtains. So you've used it, you've enjoyed it, and now you're repurposing it just as if it was new. So there's something to say for that. Where you have a canopy, yeah, you wouldn't cut that up to make curtains out of it. You would, sell that on to somebody else and then reorder fabric. Right, so that's magnetic fields discussed, electric fields discussed, radio frequency radiation discussed. When it comes to geopathic stress, which is excesses of natural radiation, we have mats that go underneath the bed. They have different strengths, and it depends on your location what is required. These mats, of course, when you move house, you can take them with you to your new place. There's a good chance that you'll need, if it's a standard strength mat, it's a good chance that that's what you need in your new place as well. High strength mats are not typically prescribed, but you should get an assessment done to make sure it works. So you got a good chance that they'll be fine for your next place too, but you should get it investigated to make sure it is, and otherwise you may need to update one or two of these mats. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I hope this answers your question, Austin. Thanks for asking.